Hey everybody, Chris the Old Ass Retro Gamer here. This is going to be the last of my current collection videos. Why? Because I've gone through everything. But this one is different because I know you're probably saying to yourself, I noticed that as these videos were going on with his collection videos, they were kind of going in order of the system's release, but he missed a few. Like, where was the Nintendo 64? I do have games for those systems. The only problem is I don't have very many, so I did not feel I needed to devote an entire episode to showing off like between 1 and 5 games I own for these systems. So today I'm just going to do an odds and ends and show off the games I do own for all these other systems. That I just don't have a lot of. So this will be a relatively short video today. Okay, and today I will start off with Intellivision, which is a system I never owned back in the day. A friend of mine down the street did, and I played a few games over at his house. But I had an Atari 2600. My father never felt it was necessary to buy another system that had almost the exact same library, aside from a few, different exclusives. But yeah, we had Atari 2600, and that's exactly what we were going to have. We're going to keep. We weren't going to get anything else until the Nintendo came out. So, starting off with Space Hawk. I don't have an Intellivision currently, so I can't tell you if these games are good or not. So your guess is as good as mine, but it looks like an asteroid-style shooter. Next, Space Spartans. And this uses the IntelliVoice module that you could attach to the Intellivision that would talk to you as you were playing the game. But since I don't have either, I can't tell you what it sounded like or what the gameplay is like. And turns out the Intellivision had the most amount of Tron games for it, and I own all of them. That was one of the reasons why I started collecting for the Intellivision. I went to a game store, they had them, I picked them all up, and I was like, hey, guess what? I guess I'm collecting for the Intellivision now. So, starting off with Tron Deadly Discs. And I've seen videos of this online, on YouTube, and this version is superior to the Atari 2600 version by far. It's a lot more... There's a lot more going on, and the graphics are a lot better. It's super fun. And there's a recognizer in this. God damn. Next is Tron Mazatron. Couldn't tell if it was good or not, but it looks kind of like a platformer type of game. And lastly, Tron Solar Sailor, which uses the IntelliVoice also. Yeah, it looks different. Looks like you're riding on one of the light beams as a solar sailor, and the game will tell you if you're fucking up or not, I guess. Okay, so those are all the Intellivision games I own. I own 5 total. I really haven't been looking to pick up any more, but there's a game store down the street that has a ton of them, and I'm probably going to start rating their collection pretty soon and adding them to mine. Okay, so next is the only Game Boy game I own, and it happens to be an import. And it is Beatmania Game Boy for the Game Boy Color. I'm a huge rhythm game fan, and I used to go to this one specific arcade. I think I mentioned this in the PlayStation video, because they had a Beatmania Third Mix arcade game machine. And I would go there, I would call out of work sometimes to go there and play that game. That and Guitar Freaks. So when I found out that I could get a Game Boy version, I jumped at it, even though it was only in Japan. And even though the music isn't all that awesome, the gameplay is exactly what you would think it is. And it is pretty fun. There's like little, chiptune versions of the songs from those games. And it's not bad. It's actually pretty fun. Can't complain. Okay, next is the one and only Nintendo 64 game I own. And it happens to be one that is not that easy to find complete. Pokemon Stadium. It comes with the transfer pack and everything. Went to my local half-price books looking for some PlayStation 1 games that I had seen there previously to see if they still had them in stock, which they didn't. And in their little display case where they put the games that are of higher price, they had this sitting in there. And I asked the guy that was running around the store if this was complete. He opened it up for me, and sure enough, it was. And they're only charging like $25 for it. And I've seen it online for $60, $65, $70. So I naturally jumped at it, even though the box is it's not in the best condition, but it is certainly not horrible looking at all. Just the corners are kind of worn. But yeah, I mean, now I just got to get a Nintendo 64 to play it on and start collecting some more games. But I figured I was collecting for everything else. I was like, one more system to collect for? Okay. And the Nintendo 64 games are actually pretty goddamn expensive right now, which is another reason why I have been avoiding collecting them. But I'm going to have to get over that soon. Next is a system that I just recently started collecting for, and I just got the system not too long ago. And that is the Gamecube, which is a game system that I was not too thrilled with when it came out because it really didn't have a whole lot of games that I thought were kind of awesome and really made me want to keep the system. There was some good stuff. There was some good stuff like Eternal Darkness and Smash Brothers and a few others. They had a couple of Final Fantasy games that were kind of cool, and the Resident Evil remakes. Ooh, damn. But over the years, I've come to appreciate the system for what it was, and they had some really cool stuff, and a lot of the exclusive stuff was not bad at all. So I recently picked up a GameCube and a handful of games. Batten Kaitos, Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean. It's a role-playing game. I do believe it's a card battling game. I have not played it yet because even though I do own a GameCube, I don't have a memory card, and I don't want to start playing a role-playing game without being able to save my progress. You know what I'm saying? Chaos Field. It's a shooter. Everyone, especially Metal Jesus Rocks, was talking about this one, singing its praises, saying that it was a pretty cool bullet hell shooter. And I'm a fan of those nowadays. I wasn't back then, but I am now. And yeah, the game is pretty fun. It is challenging as hell, though. This game I got for a couple of bucks, and it is not a good game at all. And that's Charlie's Angels. I was basically looking for the games that were the ones I want to buy for the system first, are the ones that are exclusive to the GameCube, and this is one of them. This only came out here, in the U.S. for the GameCube, so I was like, it's a few bucks. Okay, whatever. It can't be that bad. Yeah, it is. This is one of those really bad movie tie-in games. Die Hard Vendetta. This is another exclusive. It's a first-person shooter that is an all-new story involving John McClane. It is fun. It's just the controls are loose and kind of wonky, but it is not a bad game by any means. It's actually pretty cool. If you don't have it in your collection, I recommend picking it up. It's not bad at all. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Of course, this was one of the first ones I wanted to get when I got back into the collecting for the GameCube. And this one you can actually hook up with the transfer... No, not the transfer pack. The plug that hooks up to the Game Boy Advance. I can never remember what that thing is called. The Game Boy... it's not important. But, yeah, it's a multiplayer game, basically. And I remember it being a lot of fun. Yeah, it connects to your Game Boy Advance. Yep. I remember playing the Legend of Zelda 4 Swords like that. That was fun. Another one is Geist, which is a game made by Nintendo, or maybe not made by it, but released by Nintendo. It's a horror game where you play as a ghost and you can possess everything around you. Buckets of water, people, guns, whatever you want. I remember it not getting a lot of love when it came out, but nowadays people talk about how awesome and creative it was. So I found it at a local store pretty cheap, so I picked it up. Resident Evil 0. This was one of the first games I looked for when I got my GameCube back again. And it does not disappoint. I remember this game being the shit back then, and it still is the shit now. It's super awesome. Now I just want the remake of the original game. And the last game, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2. Yeah, this was the game that I got with my GameCube that Christmas that it came out. My parents bought it for me for Christmas that year. And they were like, well, which game do you want? There was no question. It was going to be this one because the one for Nintendo 64 I thought was pretty badass. And this one lives up to it, even though the third one doesn't. But super awesome game. And then lastly, I started collecting for the PSP, even though I don't own one yet. But I've been finding some really good games really cheap, and I could not pass them up. I will be buying a PSP pretty soon. I found one pretty inexpensively that works perfectly, looks awesome. So yeah, it will be mine. Oh yes, it will be mine. Okay, so the first one I have is Brave Story, New Traveler. It's a role-playing game made by Xseed, and I've learned pretty quickly when I got back into collecting that if you see Xseed on a role-playing game title, you know you're in for a pretty decent game. So when I found this at my local half-price books for about $7, I said, yes, I must have this. Next is Every Extend Extra. It's a puzzle game made by the people who made Luminous. It's music-based. I guess it's sort of a rhythm game, I guess, but I couldn't tell you since I can't play it. Got this for a penny. In a lot of games that I bought off of Amazon that I talked about in my PlayStation 2 video, I got this with it for a penny, so I couldn't pass that up. Saw this for about $12 at the same half-price books. Final Fantasy IV, the complete collection, Final Fantasy IV is my favorite role-playing game in this series. I played, it was known as Part 2 over here in the US, but I never got into a role-playing game as much as I got into that one. And this one has Final Fantasy The After Years, which is an extension, kind of like a sequel to the game, which I'm dying to play. And I can't because I don't own a PSP yet. But when I saw this there, and it was in great condition, comes with everything, you bet your ass I snapped this up. And lastly, Valhalla Knights, another Xseed role-playing game. This one looks a little more strategic than the others, but I've lately gotten really into role-playing games, so I'm all for it. So I can't wait to get a PSP so I can try all of these. So that's it for my odds and ends video. You can see why I saved this one for last. There aren't a lot of games that I own for all these systems. But that is going to change pretty soon, especially for the Nintendo 64 and the Intellivision, and the Gamecube, of course. Gamecube, I'm starting to dig on my Gamecube like no one's business. So, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm open to hear anything you have to say. If you have ideas for shows, things you want me to review, things you want me to talk about, let me know as well. I'm open to everything. And until I talk to you next time, this is Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, signing off.